The significance of this event is not only about a book's launching ceremony. Our discussion can be regarded as an extension of his book, research, and some creative thoughts about the next stage and the development of Sino-African relations. We welcome Professor Tang to give us a brief introduction of his book.
Thank you very much. The topic of today's discussion is about coevolutionary pragmatism. I use it to describe the approaches and impacts of China-Africa economic cooperation. And we see China actually has a very extensive and also significant presence in Africa today. Since 2009, China has become Africa's largest bilateral trading partner. And after 2016, China's trade with Africa has always been larger than US, Japan, France, and the UK combined. Chinese contractors, they already held more than 60% of Africa's entire construction market in 2019. What's the momentum behind it? So what are China's approaches and what are the impacts of these approaches? I propose my answer to this strong growing ties between China and Africa, because both sides have these diverse, flexible, and pragmatic approaches, and it doesn't follow any models, even not China's own model. And the impact of this approach is it will have better effects to drive industrial transformation, mainly in Africa, but it will also benefit China's continuous development as well. Emphasize China-Africa, their cooperation is centered around the target. The Washington Consensus have this model-centered thinking. They are saying we need a liberal democracy, and we need like small state and more privatization and market. China's experience found out this model-centered approach doesn't work, because this comprehensive and diverse transformation in different countries, they cannot be summarized with just several conditions. It changes always with time and with different traditions. So what matters is rather this target of continuous productivity growth.
During the 80s, 90s, it was imposed as what they call the structural adjustment policies, which was originally or based on this Washington Consensus. All the economies in Africa suffered a lot from this structural adjustment. The government also was deprived from providing the social services which are supposed to be, the purpose of any government. The damage was done. This FOCAC, which now, as we just celebrated this 20th year last year, is a novel way of doing business with other countries. In the sense that the FOCAC approach relies on win-win between China and Africa. Every 3 years we meet, every 3 years we assess.
So my question is do you think in this cooperation between China and Africa, as you described, something that's very specific to China?
Washington Consensus is imposed, and the Chinese approach is dialogue between Africa and China. That is very simple. We don't have a choice when they impose on us the structural adjustment policies, because of the countries who accepted this, they accepted it because they were in need. But now we are in need. But when we deal with China, we discuss what we need and how we can have that. We cannot repeat the same experience of China in industrialization. But I think China could assist with the technologies they have in promoting the industries.
As an African, I'm interested to know what are your thoughts on the lessons Africa can learn from China's industrialization as far as executing the African Free Trade Agreement?
I totally agree with the ambassador said. So this more equal and more open, frank discussion between China and Africa. That's exactly part of this co-evolutionary spirit. But in addition to that, I would say China is also more confident, and then also in its approaches more persistent and flexible in its cooperation with Africa. So more confident, it's actually based on China's own experience. The industrialization, it works as a whole, not as individual parts, although the whole cannot be separated from the individual changes. But what's more critical is this whole structure, the whole system. And that's why this interaction and co-evolution is so important. Now in cooperation with Africa, we are together still continuing this process of transformation. And I think that's also then we can come to the question of post-COVID recovery. I'm actually quite optimistic and confident that in spite of this slight dive due to the pandemic, China-Africa's cooperation will see further growth. That's because we see this transformation still has a lot of potential. And the pursuit of productivity growth, the pursuit of better life, better society, more advanced industrial society, that's deeply rooted in both sides, people and thinking. And we just need to find out the way through practice so that we can achieve this long-term goal.
I see that there are both advantages and disadvantages for private enterprises. The advantage is that they are more efficient, but the disadvantage is that there exists information asymmetry, and there are some enterprises who pursue high profit, and sometimes they sacrifice the mutual trust and the credibility between China and Africa. Are there some certain actions and criteria that can help us select those qualified private enterprises?
Well, we are saying that the goals for the African Free Trade Area, for instance, is to harmonize the trade policies and regulatory framework and rationalizes trade negotiations, reduces the cost of doing business, supports industrialization, and stimulates cross-border infrastructural projects. However, to realize these goals, strong partnership with China through FOCAC and Belt and Road Initiative are required to mobilize resources. China, as a constant partner of Africa, plays a key role in supporting the empowerment of youth in Africa through promotion of knowledge sharing, entrepreneurship, cultural and experience.
Yeah, my answer to first the state-owned and private companies. Like you mentioned, Chinese state-owned companies, maybe they are more disciplined, their size is larger, and while the private ones, they are more flexible and more sometimes smaller and maybe not so self-disciplined. The larger Chinese state-owned companies, they can perform this function of taking both public interest and the company's profit. These both parts, they can take both of them into consideration. While the private companies, maybe for them that's more commercialized. In this overseas operation, both the state-owned companies and the private ones, they need to survive in the market through competition. So a lot of them, they try to be more competitive and follow the market rules. These are the commonalities between them.
And do you think that is there really a transfer of knowledge or technical skills between Africa and China? I would like to know, what could African youth do to speed up the economic development of the continent? Thank you.
Regarding the knowledge transfer, that's an excellent question. The knowledge transfer itself is also a chicken and egg dilemma, and that requires the industrialization and economic development first, so that you can apply your knowledge to this advanced level. So you want to find the knowledgeable young technicians that go to Africa but cannot find in factories employing them. I hope in 20 years we find a lot of factories actually desiring the young talents like you to go back to Africa.
When economies are at different levels of development, they tend to place different priorities on environmental priorities. So in your co-revolutionary pragmatism design, how do you see Africa to balance this sort of environmental and social concerns, especially when most economies are in need?
In the last chapter of my book, I use this wind, the solar, this water, this sanitation as the first starting story, to show that China is actually also one of the most active players in Africa's environmental related business. China is also the world's largest solar panel producer as well as a wind turbine producer. So this all shows that China is very serious and very proactive regarding the environmental protection. But however, China also knows industrialization always requires environmental costs. So this is a lesson which unfortunately cannot be avoided. However, we can try to do something to minimize it or try to reduce this cost. That's what China and Africa are trying to do. Like for this the regulation, although in fact that's maybe related to also the local governance question. Maybe sometimes the local government doesn't have strong enough environmental law enforcement. And China, in fact, through the business association or through the bank monitoring, will help with African countries together to monitor the environment and try to have a higher environmental standards.
Chinese actually, I think it mainly refers to economic interests normally, I think, but President Biden, on behalf of America or Western countries, they normally mention values first, such as democracy and freedom. How do you compare that? And also, I think Ms. Osman can answer the question. So, what's the long-term vision of Africa?
About the economy and the values. It's actually the China find out when you want to create a society which can resist this imperialism, you need to adopt this enterprise entrepreneurship. You need to adopt the market economy. You need to adopt this specialization and industrialization, so that you have the capacity to resist this kind of imposed value. But through this emphasis on economy, in fact, you find your own value in the new industrialized period.
We are happy that China indicated at its highest level by President of China himself that China will help Africa in implementing the Africa Free Trade Area. And they are ready to assist in that secretariat with all what it needs. So we are confident that with China we can go along with this. This is why we are keen. And this may lead me to the leapfrogging for the industrialization. What is our goal in Africa? Our goal in Africa is unity. We are building strategic partnership across the globe towards attaining the Africa we want.
Dialogue is the fundamental basis for the China and African cooperation. There is no China model. If there is one, there is a one China-Africa model, which is flexible, which is very practical, which can be very resilient. Let's be co-evolutionary and let's grow together.